Brad Fanshaw and Tim, they have another podcast. I can't remember the name of it, but good
Yeah.
guys, known them a long time. Brad came to the SoCal race and we were looking at the track and I was telling him like, hey dude, it's all dirt all day, every day right here, if that's what guys are looking for. I go, we're in SoCal. I don't, where's everybody out with their knobbies, Um, so we were kind of joking about it and he's like, what's the biggest difference between today and tomorrow? And I told Brad, I go, I go, as we stand here, as we did in 1984, 84, 82, pick a year. I go, it's really kids going around a track, dude. That's really all it is. And I go, they're having a great time, just like we did. It's not what we did, but it is, but it isn't, and he's just like, man, no one's ever like put it to me like that. I go, at the end of the day, it's the same, but obviously there's some differences, but when you really dumb it down, it's kids going around a track like they did in 75 and how they're doing in 2025.
BMX Breakthrough is bridging the gap from old school to new school, from tracks to manufacturers, from new riders to their local tracks, and it doesn't stop at racing, but the mission is to connect people with bikes. Join me, Jay Oaks, as I interview key people in the sport and in the industry that are involved in their local circles, in their communities, at their local tracks, and aiming to make a difference on a local level. You'll hear stories, marketing tips, failures, successes, and a way to make a difference in your local BMX community. Let's dive in as we kick off this next episode.
Everyone wants it to be bigger and better. Everybody does. I've never met anyone that's like, man, I wish it was smaller and whatever. It's like obviously, I was just talking with somebody talking about, there's a lot of cities and a lot of towns that don't have tracks for kids to go race at. And I go, because I was telling him, more tracks fixes a lot of things, It sells more bike parts, it sells, I mean, could just go on and on, you know.
Well, that's when I had the idea to do what I wanted to do, and really it grew out of a, man, how do I use my knowledge base, my business background and of consulting and marketing, and how do I help the sport do that? And so it was, I mean, we just started, I don't know if you had seen that early on, but we started working with Cody Wilson and started some marketing
Mhm.
help calls and just trying to give people tips, tricks, ideas on how to better serve their communities. Um and and I remember talking to somebody and they go, "Oh, you might have some pushback." And I was like, "I don't understand." Yeah, again, I don't want to focus on the negative. I didn't understand because I thought, man, any bit that the sport grows, it benefits everybody that's a part of the sport, and
Absolutely.
that's amazing. Um, so I just, yeah, I kids get so much out of the sport. It's fun to see, and I just think that there's so much value in it that it's 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 sad when you talk to families and they don't have these kids don't have a sport that they thrive in, or they don't have something that is building their self-esteem, and they
Mhm.
still don't know about the sport of BMX.
Yeah, no, I mean, being in, being in as long as I have, I've seen it affect a lot of people, positively, from life lessons to friends to, I've had a mom say, man, my kid was pretty introverted and we tried the team thing and, it didn't work. And, coming out here and being at practice, he's really come out of his shell, and this sport has got him to do that. It's just cool to hear stuff like that, So, yeah, I mean, there's so many stories like that. And, um, yeah, geez, where do you, there's a, that's a podcast on itself, you know.
It is. Well, yeah, I'm curious because so I want to know how is it that you got into BMX? I think you and I have talked about it. We've spent some time talking. I want to say, actually, to start things out, I love and I look forward to so much when I get to hang out with you because we've had fun conversations. You've got fun stories to tell. And so the times that I get to hang out with you at different events or different races or whatever, it ends up being a highlight of my week. You should know that.
Wow. Thank you. I guess I'll take that as a compliment. You know, sometimes we don't do well with compliments because sometimes we don't get a lot. That's why some people I'll go, "What? Hey, I appreciate. What's the catch?" You know, um, the yeah, how I started in BMX. Man, my dad. You know, my parents, you know, it kind of all starts back to my parents and all of that. You know, my parents are from basically like Ventura, California area. And you know, my dad was into, you know, he surfed and he skied and he raced motorcycles and you know, he did all these things. So you just grow up around that. And, you know, I learned how to ski when I was about 5 and, you know, dabbled in surfing here and there, you know, over the many years. And you know, my dad raced a lot of motocross and we, you know, in the early 70s. Now, my dad was Air Force, so we moved around a lot. So, um, in the early 70s, we were back towards where, you know, the Ventura area. And my dad, you know, my dad was racing. And then I would go to the races, you know, we'd go to a lot of the um, legendary races. Like, you know, like I went to the very first Supercross at the LA Coliseum that they ever had when I was 5. My dad's like, "You were there. You fell asleep, but you were there." You know, and I went to the Carlsbad GP in Carlsbad, California, you know, in 73, 74, and you know, just got to do a lot of those things. And then as I got older, I got, you know, obviously I got a bike and you know, you want everybody my age wanted to emulate Evel Knievel because he was in his prime, you know, around those time, around, you know, the early 70s through you know, you know, most of that time. And then you know, ultimately I ended up getting a motorcycle, went racing with my dad, got hurt, but one constant was a lot of my buddies had BMX bikes and I had a BMX bike. So I would ride with them during the week, and then you know, some of them would go race BMX, and we would go race motorcycles. And a lot of the other kids, you know, their parents were like, "Motorcycles are too expensive, they're too dangerous," you know, blah 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 blah. So, um, you know, I didn't have that with my parents. So they were like, "Danger is good." So you know, we did that, and then I ended up getting hurt, and I had a bad crash, and I hurt my neck, and I didn't have brothers or sisters, so my mom was like, "Oh, cool." You know, I was like, "Hey, I want to go race BMX with my buddies." So, I was into BMX like from kind of mid 70s on because of like the motorcycle industry kind of grasped onto that with like Redline and Webco and Champion. You know, a lot of those brands were motorcycle brands. And then for my 10th birthday, I got a Yamaha motorbike because my dad, he was in the Air Force, but he was kind of moonlighting at the Yamaha shop to support his motorcycle habit. So, you know, as most people do. And you know, he brought that home and so that was kind of my first real BMX bike, but it was obnoxiously heavy and you lost all your power when you pedaled because the suspension went up and down. And I used to blow the fork seals, and there was always oil dripping down the forks. And then if it wasn't heavy enough, I got the bright idea to, man, those Moto Mags are awfully, awfully cool, man. Those will look really cool on my bike. So then you add those on top of. So so yeah, and at that time, I you know I still had like a hopped up XR 75 and all that stuff, and I always from that point on I always kind of dabbled in motorcycles, but I kind of did more of the BMX thing because that was more what a lot of my friends did, and I could go do it with my friends, and um, you know, and then just kind of evolved from there. So again, with with my dad being in the Air Force, when we moved to Florida, there was in a town called Parker, which is part of Panama City, right outside of Tyndall Air Force Base. When we first moved there, we rented this house, and right across the street was this. It was a big, huge field, and then it had a church, and it had almost like a covered, like a DeSoto or Tulsa type covering. Not quite that big, but they used to do these like kind of like big revivals almost, like uh they would do them like once a month or something. All these cars would pull in. Well, to the back of that was a BMX track that we used to ride on with our bikes, but it had closed down, and it was an NPSA track at that time. But it had closed down, but it was still there. So I used to ride my XR 75 on it, and we'd ride our BMX bikes on it. But it wasn't it had closed down, but it was the classic. It had the half buried tires like all the way like around the whole track. It was like, you just saw half the tire. So like when you'd snag a pedal, it wasn't good because your bike would just stop, the 70s stuff back then. So, then eventually the first race I ever raced, like real deal race on a BMX bike was about 1980. And it was at the NBL track in Tallahassee, Florida, which was about an hour from where we lived. And my buddies were like, "Hey, we're going to go to this race and, ask your parents if you can go." And so I go, and then we were driving there, and I'm like seeing a lot of cars with BMX bikes on the back. It's like, wow, a lot of people must do this. So the first race that we went to there in person, I actually ended up not racing because I want to say it was an NBL National. I don't know if they were called War of the Stars back then or what it was, but it was like a really, really, really big race that I wasn't really kind of prepared to do that just yet because it's like you see the pro guys there that you saw in the magazines. The first time I saw any of that. So we just hung out because they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna be gone for the whole weekend." And and my parents said, "Yeah, cool, here's some money, go hang out with your buddies." So I didn't race. So then we went back a little bit, a week or two later, and then we did a local race, and then kind of dabbled a little bit here and there, doing the motorcycle. But anyway, long story short, 82, we moved to Idaho, and then that's when I got really, really deep into the racing stuff, like 82, 82-ish, yeah, early 82. And
Okay.
then I was one of those guys that I didn't take the 20 years off and come back or, go to college, get married, and they're back 10 years later. It was funny when a lot of my friends came back in their 40s. I was kind of like, working here, it was hard to race and work and do all these things. And I was still racing a lot locally and all that. So it got to the point where I was just like, I got nag plates and I got this and I got that. And, I got District Ones from 7 different states. For all ended tomorrow, I think I'm okay. So, I kind of was like winding down, just kind of go ride practice. And they're like, "Dude," they're like re-stoked, like, "Dude, you got to get back out here." And, I was just like, "Dude, I'm good. I don't, your broken collarbone. I don't miss that." So, my last national I raced was 2007. And then, I've always, so between, from the mid 70s or 80s from my first race till now, I've always kind of either, been racing or running events or around it, progressed with the tracks, the bikes, the geometry, like everything, flat pedals, clip pedals. I remember when aluminum came back in, I was just like, didn't they already try this once, man? Everything cracked and broke, and but the aluminum in the 90s was much better than the aluminum in the 70s, as we found out. So,
Man.
materials are better, parts are better, but it took all the stuff we broke in the 70s and 80s to get to where it is now. So,
Yeah. That's cool. It's really cool having the progression. Well, I look at outside looking in, and I would assume it's pretty cool from your perspective too, of being in the sport for as long as you were and being active, an active participant of the sport, and
Hmm.
then getting to see that massive evolution.
Yeah. Yeah. It's when you think back to like a lot of those races, like perfect example, Gmo and I were talking to this guy today that was in here at our office in Arizona. He was looking at some of the things and he was talking about, the Grands track in '84 and how big it was and how it had, seven straightaways and this many turns. And we're like, dude, the turns were like 2, 3 feet high. Now, the part that trips people out is when they talk about the Oklahoma City Grands, like in the Myriad Convention Center, which they actually just tore down not long ago, pretty recently, because they're going to build a new venue for the Thunder and all that. Um, if it and Bill Morris, he's our national director, heads up, like, he's there for the big build. Billy Allen builds it, but he kind of marks everything out. He kind of oversees all that. He was the one that told me. I didn't believe him at first. He said, the Marriott Convention Center floor, the floor space is the exact same size as the South Point Arena in Vegas, which is used to be our smallest track of the year. But when you look at, we have here in our office, we have all the Grands tracks, like from 78 to now. So you can literally look and then you can see how thin the straightaways were and how low the turns were and you can watch all the old videos and all that. And he goes, you can look it up online. So I went and looked it up and they're almost identical. And the tracks we build now are so wide and the turns are so big and it just eats up a lot of that floor and the straightaways. That's why I go, that's why all those, it was all such stop and go back then, because it was like this little tight turn, and then you'd have to, everybody bang into each other, and then you got to get going again. And then the next turn, everybody bangs into each other, and then you could get going. Now you can, it's all, whatever, So, and it, interestingly enough, uh, Brad Fanshaw and Tim, they have another podcast. I can't remember the name of it, but good
Yeah.
guys, known them a long time. Brad came to the SoCal race and we were looking at the track and I was telling him like, hey dude, it's all dirt all day, every day right here. If that's what guys are looking for. I go, we're in SoCal. I don't, where's everybody out with their knobbies, Um, so we were kind of joking about it and he's like, what's the biggest difference between today and tomorrow? And I told Brad, I go, I go, as we stand here, as we did in 1984, 84, 82, pick a year. I go, it's really kids going around a track, dude. That's really all it is. And I go, they're having a great time, just like we did. It's not what we did, but it is, but it isn't. And he's just like, man, no one's ever like put it to me like that. I go, at the end of the day, it's the same, but obviously there's some differences, but when you really dumb it down, it's kids going around a track like they did in '75 and how they're doing in 2025,
Yeah.
you know.
And at
So
and at the end of the day, it's adults playing around on kids' bikes,
yeah,
riding around.
correct. But yeah, it was just so he was, I think he's expecting some big epiphany of an answer. And he was just like, dude, it was so simple. You're like, you're right. I mean, yeah, I like take the frame material out of it and the pedals, take all that stuff out of it. And it's the end of the day, it's the same thing. They get a trophy, they race hard, they're here with their buddies and families and just like we did. Just, back then we rode in the back of the pickup truck with 10 of your friends and your bikes, which would be frowned upon today. And, now they might come there in a motorhome or a Sprinter van or,
Yeah. Yeah, the mode of transportation has changed, the bikes have changed, but the principle stays the same. Which actually, so okay, because of that, and which is a great segue into, I want to know, Shannon, you've been around the sport for a long time. What is it that you love about BMX? Because if you didn't love BMX, you would have left a long time ago.
I tell people all the time, I'm still a fan, man. I'm still a fan. I love to watch. I love the grams. I love the pressure of it for the guy, the riders up for the titles, even, nag one to getting their first, might be their first national win. I mean, I'm still a fan. I love to watch it. I love to, but I mean, I've heard so many people say it. I mean, I have friends I had when I was 14 or 15 years old that I'm still, you're still friends with. We're still, I've met so many cool people because of BMX. I equate some of that being able to meet maybe more than some people because my dad was in the military or Air Force. So I lived a lot of places and had a lot of local tracks, um, and then my wife was in the Air Force for 8 years and we moved around and, I raced, how many people got to race consistently in Hawaii for 3 years, and when we lived there, most islands had one and some had two tracks. So like for a state series, you'd take a 20-minute flight over to Maui and you'd race like Saturday and Sunday and then fly home, and you got to hang out and it was a very, very unique setting for a state series for sure. Because and luckily I lived on Oahu and we had the most membership, so the state finals always came to us, so that always worked out great. But it was cool to but yeah, I mean friends, things that it taught me, like just if you work hard, and do, like put your time in, you got to work shoes, like going from novice to intermediate to expert is tough. And not everybody's wired to kind of put themselves through that learning curve. And it's, it's, it can be a struggle or it becomes, I hear people all the time, yeah, this isn't fun anymore. We're not getting the big trophy and all the days are too long. And, all of a sudden they find all the things that aren't, instead of, yeah, but he's hanging out with his friends and you got to go to a new place and you got to see this and you got to see that, so many, like I heard I had a lot of people that I've talked, I say a lot. There's a few people I talked to on the phone that went to the race in South Dakota this year, and they were just talking about how cool it was. They're like, never went there. We went and saw Mount Rushmore, and we drove there, and we saw the Devil's Tower on the way. And I've only seen it in movie. So many things. And if they weren't going to that race, they would not probably, or you could go see it, but it was all part of the experience, and that was. Some of my old friends from when we were kids, that I'm still friends with. I mean, the races were great, but it was like the trip there and the trip back and you know, 5 or 6 kids in a hotel, someone sleeping in the bathtub and two dudes are on the floor, and it's like I'm always like, do kids do that anymore? It's a different time. It's a different time, different parenting. Um, but it teaches you so many things. Like you could send that kid to the airport by himself and he's going to get there. He's going to figure it out, because they're, going through staging, learn, there's so many things you learn from racing and, from sport, good or bad sportsmanship. Oh, that wasn't good. I probably shouldn't do that again. That didn't go over well with a lot of people, or vice versa. Or, just like I said, it teaches you things in life, and it doesn't, it. I don't know. I mean, there there's so many things. I think, friendships. Still a fan. Still love watching it. Still love being a part of it. So many amazing athletes. Seeing how, speaking of progression, you look at like in 1984, how a 10-year-old rode to 2025 how a 10-year-old rides. It's like night and day. I've seen girls, females, women progress so much. They can, now you're just like, man, I'm glad I'm not racing them, you know. Any of those people that go down that big hill, I run the gate there a lot, and I give mad props because I'm, we joke, Luna and some of us joke, we're like, I'm so glad they didn't have that when I raced because I would have went down it. I probably would have got hurt. And looks cool. I like running it from where I like being up there where I'm at. But mad from the Super X kit. I mean, anyone, it's impressive,
Yeah.
So I
Well,
don't know if
like,
I answered your question, but
no, absolutely. I think that there are so many things that are valuable as as a sport in itself, but then it's fun hearing the things that each individual person really enjoys and loves about the sport. I mean, you talked about these kids that are doing the same thing, and you talked about the kids that are going out on the track, they're competing, and you mentioned the long days and stuff, um, and and I think that sometimes there are long days, and a lot of times when people get into racing, the families that are newer, I'll immediately try to talk them out of going
yes.
to like state races too soon or nationals too soon
Hmm.
because having too young of a kid there, it makes for a really long day.
Yeah.
And it's like, so just enjoy your time on the track, and for a 5-year-old kid, it's a ton of waiting around. But once kids start to get the relationships, and what you were talking about is the experience of the national, and I think in a bigger sense, I remember going to a few bigger races, and the race was probably the smallest part of the trip. I remember going up to Nanaimo, BC when I was a kid, and the
Yep.
the 2 hour, 2.5 hour ferry ride.
Awesome
Um,
ferry ride.
yeah,
I've
getting
done
to
it, done it a few times to go to races.
getting to camp in my friend, him and his parents were tent camping, and
Hmm.
I'd never seen one before. It was a 3-bedroom tent, and he had his own room, and I got to camp with him,
That's
and
awesome.
that was super fun. And then on the way back, I remember seeing Bubba Harris. That was when he was in a cast and riding for Redline,
Hmm.
and he was sitting on the ferry. And anyway, the race was fun. I have no idea what place I got, but
Right. But
the entirety of
it was the adventure of getting there and back.
yeah. And I think sometimes is like the racing is the reason that you go, but I think there can be so much value in putting less emphasis on the racing and more on the
Yes.
experience. Like you said, the kids playing with their friends, just running around, having a good time, making memories, laughing.
Yeah. When my parents and I talk about it, it's always the trip there or the trip back, or remember when, Donnie did this and, blah, 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 blah at the gas station. It's all that stuff. I remember going to Salt Lake and we're at the KOA campground and like the boss dudes are there in the green van and Daryl Young's there and Richie Anderson was on Torker then. And I was like, dude, how do you have white tough wheels with gold graphite hubs? He's like, well, I know a guy and I race for Skyway and they can do, and you're just like, dude, they're at the KOA campground, like with us, and it was just like, you got to see them as almost interacting as like people versus the racers you always saw with the helmet or, all that. And, yeah, it was, yeah, I mean, that's my parents and I talk about all kinds of funny stories, and it's like my mom now, it's like she's like, you can't miss the grands, I was like, Mom, you have no idea how big that race is now, I'm like, you can't, unless you're on your deathbed. It's the biggest BMX race in the world. You can't miss it. I go, and what I do is a pretty important thing there. So, because she's like, can't you just do a Thanksgiving? And I always go, that's just something I hear about. I've forgotten what that really is, because I've been between working here so many years and racing and doing some races prior and all that. It's like I can't even remember the last. obviously my neighbors think it's a crazy thing. And I go, well, in our world, it's crazy if you're not there. So they're like, really? You do it on Thanksgiving? Yeah, yeah. You know, you're
Do
not
you,
in it, so you don't get it.
do you know how many years it's been since you weren't racing over Thanksgiving or weren't at the
Uh,
race?
well, I've been to 30 in a row working here. And then I raced probably three, four before that, and a couple here and there. So, I don't know, 35, 36 of them, not all in a row, but definitely like probably like low 30s to 34 in a row, 30 working here.
Wow.
And then, um, yeah, so this year I'll be 31 working here, and then, on from there. So, seen a lot of cups handed out, man. A lot of cups and white hats, you know.
Yeah.
And
What
that
do you,
and that's always weird to me too, because I remember watching that as a kid. Now I'm the guy like sliding the cup to BA and giving him his notes and the hat, I set it all up, and it's like, from being the kid watching that done to now now I'm not the guy handing it to him, but I'm very involved in the process. So it's like, you know, um, some people I'm like, it may mean more to me because of that, because I've watched it, and I'm always like, I don't know, it's a pretty cool thing. It all comes down to that, you know, all year long, it builds, 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 and then it's like, boom, handing out cups.
yeah, it's definitely, I can see that being probably in some ways surreal to go from watching that experience and then to being there and not just there are a lot of people that look up to something or somebody or and they end up working for that person or they end up doing that
Hmm.
thing kind of like you've done, but not a lot of people have were as invested and then ended up in that experience for as long as you are or have been.
Yeah. And I jokingly tell this story lots of times where, when I was like, junior high, high school, friends, parents, guidance counselors are like, dude, you gotta have a plan, bro. You gotta, this bike thing is gonna take you nowhere in life, man. You gotta, and I'm like, you know, they're like, you're not gonna take the SATs. I was like, dude, there's two double pointers that day, dude. I'm not going to college. I don't want to go to college. So, so, uh, you know, uh, I talk with some of my coworkers, that, like TL says, ride a bike, it'll take you places. And I was like, dude, I've been all over the world, man. I've been to the X Games, the Dew Tour, I've been to the Olympics. I've been done so many things because of a bicycle, whether I'm riding in it or I'm there for it, supporting the riders, with Team USA, whatever, and I always, it's been interesting when I've been back to like high school reunions. I don't want to say I had a chip on my shoulder, but I always kind of had that, like, I'm gonna prove everybody wrong. And even my dad said, yeah, when you went from more throttling to pedaling, I was like, I don't know if I don't think he's going backwards, but whatever. And he goes, I think you did all right. I think so. I just followed my passions. I told my mom, luckily I'm stubborn and don't listen to people. And again, being a military Air Force kid, I knew there was so much more out there than being from like the same town and same place. And I was just like, you can say whatever you want. But yeah, it was it's been yeah, I mean, we went to the Worlds in Baku, and I remember swimming with one of my coworkers, and I was like, dude, we're swimming in the Caspian Sea right now. I go, did you ever think you would be doing it? And he's like, no. And he was like, it's all because of bicycles. That's why we're here. So and then, like we just went to Denmark, and then we went we went to London and we went to Sweden, and it was all on that trip, again, which I've already been to those, but still, it's like, and then like my 20-year reunion, I saw some of my teachers and I was, showing some pictures. They were like, "What have you been doing?" And I was just like, why would you tell a kid that? And I remember telling my one teacher, I was like, remember when I'd have my BMX action in my book and you'd take it away from me and said, "You're wasting your time." And I said, "I've done this, this, and this." And I go, "And I haven't talked about the War of 1812 since I left your class." And he was like, "Well, you're one of the lucky ones." But I'm not advocating don't go to school. I don't necessarily think, I don't know if I had a plan, but I knew what I wanted to do, whether it be, I worked in bike shops for 10 years, because we moved around a lot. My wife was in the military, and you can't, it's hard you got to move every 2, 3 years, so you just, you know, knew how to work on bikes, and I always had no trouble finding work, and you get to meet a lot of cool people and do all that too. So yeah, it was all life experiences and lessons to get to where we are here.
That's cool.
So
Okay, you mentioned BMX action. What was one of your favorite or the most iconic photos that just stood out to you and stuck with you?
um one of my I have a story outside of BMX action too about a cover, but I'll answer this question. So one of my favorite covers was the July 79 with Harry Larry on the cover. It's all white and he's doing a big Leary. That was always, I would just stare at it. Like, dude, look at the bell helmet sticker. Look at this. Look, his spindle's bent on his cranks. So if you look at it, so you're going to go look at it now. And when you look at it, you can see his cranks are off because the spindle's bent. I mean, that's how much I looked at it. You're literally like,
Wow. I
you
had
know,
no idea.
yeah. So if you look at that cover, you can tell that they're not like this. They're a little bit bent. And I asked him about that. He goes, "Oh yeah." He goes, "I bent it in that photo shoot." So um
That's
that was, you know, there's a lot of good covers. That one just was always one of my favorite ones. But outside of that, one of my favorite all-time covers, believe it or not, it was at my school library, and I was like blown away, dude, when I walked in, and my buddy's like, "Look at it, look at this." And it was The Boy's Life with the FMF cover with the three guys and you know, with the goggles. And I was like, "Oh my God." It's like, I think it's December 76. And I remember just drooling on that thing, man. And being from more motorcycles, you're like, FMF, this is as cool as it gets, and it had racing in it. And I was just like, "Oh my God, this is the coolest ever." And it had
that's
that
cool.
jump shot of Utterback inside, doing he's got the torn glove. I mean, I used to just look at things. But I did the same thing with motocross though. Like Johnny O'Mara and his bike, I would just look at the bike and just go, "Dude, that thing is like a weapon, man. Look at that thing. It's just so amazing." His gear, like Marty Smith, same thing. That was kind of my guy when I was a kid. Marty Smith was, he was the first guy Honda really hired. And, so yeah, but it's just magazines meant so much to us.
Yeah.
And then even marketing, like I remember like before they introduced the Team Mongoose and the John George ad where he's holding the blue Team Mongoose up, it was like all the ads up to that, it's like you saw like a part of the bike and you saw this and you saw that, and it was like every month it was like the build up, and then you saw it and you're just like, "What? I got that is the coolest bike ever." And it's just emblazoned in my head, man, when I saw it.
I think that's one
Now
of the
kids are like, magazine?
yeah. Yeah, I was actually talking about that in the last episode with somebody is I think that's one of the things that I probably miss the most about I was on the tail end of the
Magazines.
magazine generation
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate because I remember just going through my dance comp issues were like the most near and dear thing as I just go through and circle and shop for bikes and
Yep.
build dream bikes. But having magazines, and I had more BMX Plus, and it in my teenage years I was doing more freestyle stuff, but just watching looking through those magazines and looking at those pictures and watching through and waiting for the next issues is I think that's one of the things that I miss the most is just the studying of the photos, the
Hmm.
admiring of the photos, and the conversation of with social media. It's like, oh, that's cool, and now it's gone. Oh, that's cool, and now it's gone, and
Yeah. Yeah. And
something's
it's,
missed.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I keep joking like, oh, magazines are gonna be like albums, dude. It's gonna come back. I go, everything always comes back.
Yeah,
Vinyl's cool. Magazines are gonna be cool. Well, we got vinyl. Now we got to read a magazine while we're listening to vinyl. That's what we
yeah.
did back then.
Well, I appreciate like uh had a I did an interview with Scott Town talking about
Yep.
Greystoke and like the
Yeah.
detail and the effort that they made to turn that more into like a coffee table book than just a magazine.
Yes. Yeah,
And
yeah. Scott's awesome. No, he's a good dude. Super talented. Soul rider to the core, I mean, he'll ride till he can't ride anymore, I'm sure. And
yeah,
just good solid dude.
yeah,
But
and
yeah, it's it's funny because I got the BMX actions, but what I had before that was because racing mini bikes, I had mini cycle BMX action because that had all the mini bike hop up XR75 stuff and BMX. I was like, I mean, how much cooler can it be? It's the two things I like the most. So I actually have a bunch of those, which were kind of pre pre BMX action, and then but yeah, it was cool because we went to some of the races that were covered in there for the mini cycle BMX action. The photography and covers weren't necessarily as cool as like BMX action or BMX. It wasn't as high gloss, but it had all the stuff you needed to know, you know, and still super super cool magazines. And I like all magazines. Believe it or not, I even like to thumb through the old Super BMXs that we have. That had the actor on the BMX bike, and it's so cheesy, but at the time you're just like, oh, this is the worst, man. I can't. It's like I'll read that last if I got nothing else to read. But now, when you look back, I mean, it's still cool, and it's cool to look at the bikes and look at the ads, and it's weird because if you look at like, Super BMX, it had like all the ads that weren't in like BMX Action or BMX Plus. It's kind of like uh, this is the magazine I can afford, like smaller company type stuff. Then you had kind of like, well, I can't quite do BMX Action, or I can do a couple months there, but I could do 6 here, so I'll be in BMX Plus. And then some of the bigger companies like, like your GTs or your Hutches or Diamondback, they were kind of in everything, but it's funny to, it's like I remember some ads that were in Super BMX, and then you're just like, oh, dude, there used to be this cheesy ad for like Beta shoes, and it had like the gorilla on the bike doing a wheelie, just horrible ad. And I go look it up, and Gino was like, dude, how do you remember that? I go, because it was so bad that it was good. It's like an Elvis impersonator. So it's funny that they still have a purpose, even though, everyone BMX actions quote unquote Bible. Everyone's like, oh no, Bob Osborne said it right here, dude. It says right here. So um, but yeah, my mom always bought me magazines because I wouldn't read a book, but I would read Moto magazine, surf magazine, skateboard, like BM, any, I would read them cover to cover till the covers fell off. You'd have ink on your fingers from turning the pages, or they'd be all blurred out at the top corner. I mean, so she's like, I always got you magazines because I knew you would read them, and that's unfortunately, that's some of the stuff that's just emblazoned in your my my mind, psyche, whatever. But and I always go to, do kids have that today? Do they have that? And they're not magazines, but it's like, is there a website that they just got to go to because they got to read, or a Facebook page or an Instagram, but everything's so fast, scroll, scroll, scroll,
Yeah.
so
And I think there's so much value to the experience that you grew up with of just that slower pace and having to, I mean, we live in a very
patience,
what is
patience, my friend.
yeah.
You had to have patience.
Patience.
You're
Yeah,
just like,
we
when is
live,
it gonna come? When is my
I
You'd
mean
be like, oh man, doesn't have it in his hand. You're like, I gotta wait till tomorrow. Or
yeah,
your
but
buddy would get it the day before you. You're like, dude, no way. I'm like, I'm coming over. I'm coming over. I gotta see it.
yeah. Well, I mean, we live in an instant gratification culture. I mean, Amazon delivers in 2 hours if you live in the
Yeah.
right spot. And you go online and I remember mail order. I had to when
Oh
I
yeah.
built up the bike that my daughter's racing was my 99 Huffy Junior, and I custom built the whole thing, and then I had to wait, I don't what, probably 10,
Yeah.
14 days before it showed up. And now you go and look on Amazon, and not all the BMX stuff is on Amazon, but you go and look on Amazon, and I find myself going, a day or 2 days? Like,
Yeah. It's
that's
like,
ridiculous.
can't wait that long. I need it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is funny. But yeah, I remember, you know, people losing their mind about points now. I go, dude, we used to have to wait like 2.5 months to get the magazine that was that far behind with the points. It'd be like the March issue with January points,
Yeah.
and if you have points discrepancy, you're calling in 2 months later, and yeah, it's but again, seeing all that, I remember being here when we launched our website, ababmx.com. Huge deal. Cool, man, we got a website. Okay, what does that mean? Yeah, I remember Brad working here, Brad Howland, who's still here. It was a big deal, and he's still a tech gadget guy. He's into all that stuff. He's still like that, but he's like, we gotta have a website. And then I remember uh being here and talking with some kids at the races and kids in my neighborhood. I was like, oh wow, because I I fought it was weird. I was like the weirdo guy, like people at companies says, "Oh, what's your Facebook page?" I was like, I don't have any of that stuff. I don't have that. I don't, then it was Instagram, then it was or Twitter or whatever. So, in the beginning, I actually went and I started all of our social, like our Twitter and our Facebook and our Instagram. And I remember um, a coworker who's no longer here. He'll remain nameless because he's like, "Oh, that's the dumbest thing ever. Why would you ever? Why do we even need that?" And then I go, "So and so, what do your kids do all day on their phone? Oh, they're on this and they're on that and they're on that." I go, "Right. And what's our base membership?" A lot of them didn't have phones then, because, but, at that time, I don't know. I was asking Gmail that the other day, like, when did Amari get a phone? Like, how old was he, or what's typical. So, you know, in the end, it was a smart thing to do. And, I was like, well, we need to have them just so someone else doesn't grab them and make some parody thing or go on and say a bunch of bad things and it's not us, you know. So if anything, I went, I think the first thing I did was Twitter. And then yeah, and then I think it was Facebook and then Instagram. And then after that, I was just like, I'm not I can't keep getting the next, Snapchat, not doing it. Don't want to, So we had some other guys, the younger guys that were like more into but I at least got those first few big ones, for our company just to make sure that, that we had them. And it was early on, which a lot of people didn't have a lot of that stuff. But I was like, well, I need to get it before, because you always hear about all those people that went out and bought like on the .com, they bought like all the NFL teams and the NBA teams, and then people had to buy them from them. It was like, we need to get that stuff so nobody has them, So so anyway, that was just a thought that when we're talking about social media, I was like, I was the holdout, you know.
At this time, I want to give a special shout out and thank you to our 2025 sponsors who are helping us make the mission of BMX Breakthrough happen, which is to grow the sport at a local level. These sponsors, you can find more about them in the description, and then you can use their coupon codes. And you may be saying, I don't need a coupon code, but I would ask you, please use that coupon code as a way to help us all track what we're doing together. It helps them, it helps us, it helps everyone. So at our gold level, we have Box, Mongoose, and Pro Lids. At the silver level, we have Dan's Comp, LRC, and Pro Start. And at the bronze level, we have Command Aviation, Danger Snacks, Fly Racing, Gear Blocks, Justin Shepard Title Examiner, Lincoln Park BMX, Sign Dog Northwest, Sound Cedar Lumber, and Tasco. Once again, you can follow the links in our description to find out more about these phenomenal brands. You can find the coupon codes for some of them available there. And thank you so much to our 2025 sponsors. Now back to our episode. But on the racing side, I was thinking, I wanted to ask you if what is, I don't know, one or two like super iconic races in your mind, maybe either races that you watched or races that you were in, and just like, yeah, either a track that you raced at or a moment on the gate or
Um,
something.
Man, there's been so many. Um,
Loaded question. There's a ton of them.
no. It's a good question. You just have to think like one one Grands in particular. I did race it. I didn't do that well, but I was at the race and it was the 95 Grands where uh Alan Foster or Brian Foster, it's like him, Ellis, and Levesque are kind of all um up for the title. Ellis doesn't make the main, so he's sitting in the stands with his number plate, ready to, hand it out to, it's either going to be, Christoph or Brian Foster. And then, I hear Clayton down at the stage say, oh, Foster only has to get like, fifth or better. And it's, and you're just like, dude, he's top three every race. There's no way he's not winning this title, and just all these crazy things happened. And in the last main, I think, and I don't remember exactly. He was sitting either, I want to say he was sitting fifth, what he needed to be. And then, they raced three mains like we do at the Grands now, but we used to do that all the time. But so you're sitting there going, well, yeah, he's gonna win the title. I mean, he's just got to get fifth, okay, well, he's in fifth, and then he gets out and he's in second, and there was this flat turn, which would have been the second turn. It was like a flat turn. And the irony of it is that Brian Foster was like the king of the turns, the guy you never wanted behind you, and he was swooping into, he's just, like a turn master, kind of like, you know, I would compare, Brent Lee was a guy like that, I'm older than him, but I saw him race a lot, and all these dudes that race him, you're like, dude, you never wanted that guy behind you in the last turn because he's either going to go around you, high low you, you think you got him covered, and he's go by, it's just like you saw it so many times. And Brian was like that too. So he's in second, and you're like, in your head, you're like, oh, it's over. He's gonna be top five. So he's coming through that turn, and he just like crabs out and washes out all by himself, like in a turn. You're just like the irony of that, and I was just like, I couldn't believe it. I was just like, he's not going to win the title. And then what got even crazier was that was when the if you were a foreign rider, you were not allowed to win our title. So Levesque should have won, but by default, the title went to Gary, who actually, even though he didn't make the main, and it was, like people were booing. I mean, it wasn't anything. It was just the rules. And from that next year on, that rule was changed, because of that. So,
That's crazy. No
Christoph
wonder
kind
that's
of,
a memorable race.
yeah. And I just remember just going, there's no way he's not going to win. I mean, I know that's why we raced the race, but there's no way he's not going to get in the top five. He's like a top three guy all year long. That's why he's up for the title, like every race. And just the washing out in a turn, he's the king of the turn, and he's in second. He didn't need to win. I mean, there's all these, and just being there and just watching it. I mean, there's so many of those over. I remember the year 92 grands, Brian Schmidt's up for the amateur title, and he didn't make it out of third round. We did 3 rounds then, and he got high load in the last turn by Chris Sanchez, who was a great racer, but you're like, there's no way Brian Schmidt's not making out of the motos. I mean, he's leading the amateur points, and he didn't. You're just like, did I just see that? Crazy. But memorable races for me. I mean, I don't know. It was always racing I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I have like one memorable race, but maybe my first race ever, that was fun.
Where was that at? Was that in
Uh
Florida?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And that was fun. Then I remember my first race in Idaho, get to, you know, I turned 15 on the way there. Everywhere we lived on the beach, all the, Tyndall's in Panama City, Florida, basically. We were at Keesler, which is Biloxi, Mississippi, right on the Gulf of Mexico. So we lived there. We lived there. When we lived in Maine, we were stationed, Pease Air Force Base is New Hampshire, but we lived right on the water, California. So, and then we moved to Idaho, and it was a complete culture shock to me, you know, from clothes to just everything. I'm like this beach kid, and we moved there, and I remember telling my parents, we laugh about it because I love Idaho now. We go, my wife's from up there, and we go back all the time. And uh I just remember telling my parents, like, if you retire here, I'm never ever coming back here. You're gonna wonder where I went. I'm never coming back. But when I was there about a month, I was there the last month of eighth grade, met some friends, figured out, okay, the river's like the beach, never, runs right through the middle of the city. Um, Idaho has more rivers than any other state. There's a lot of water there. So they had a great motocross scene, great BMX scene. Had to bust out the phone book, look up some bike shops because you couldn't go on the internet. Didn't have a phone. Had to old school it. So I'd go to Bob's Bike Shop, and they had a BMX flyer, and the next weekend we went racing. So I went with my buddies from the base. We all there at Mountain Home Air Force Base. So like 10 of us will go. I'm the only one that races. Everyone else is too scared. And I was like, we came all the way here and you're not going to race? I go, we're going to race. We're almost all going to race each other. And they're like, no, 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 I can't do it. So I race. I get first place. The next week we go back. All my other friends sign up and race. But it took me. I go, well, I'm racing. We came all the way here. I didn't come here to like watch. I'm racing. And so yeah, I was just always I don't know. I just always, like I said, I just knew what I wanted to do somehow, shape, or form, I guess. You know, just kind of worked out.
What kind of bike were you racing
At
in
that time,
at that time? Yeah.
I had a blue Diamondback Senior Pro, the one with the fork with two dropouts.
Okay.
Bent those, and then went to the bike shop. And he's like, these hutch forks are good. Put these on. Broke like forks were like a I don't know if I was hard on them or what, but uh I bent those, and then he gave me another pair of hutch forks, and then the Diamondback ones before they bent, they were like cracked. Remember the diamond in the dropout? It was
Okay.
like cracking through to the diamond. And I was like, yeah, these are probably gonna let go someday, but we'll just keep ramping it up. I think they're good. I think they got a few more jumps in them. So bent those, had crack dropouts, bent the hutch forks, gave me another set of hutch forks, cracked those to the circle in the dropout, cracked through. And then they're like, here, kid, take these landing gear. So I put those on and I didn't have any more problems. So, and we used to break spindles. Remember the old three-piece cranks? They used to be, the spindles were a lot, they kind of stuck out a lot more. They weren't as tight. And those would shear off. I still have scars on my ankles from breaking spindles, and then the spindle would catch your ankle, the busted
Would
off part.
would that have been was that square taper?
Use square taper, yeah.
Okay.
But prior to that, my Yamaha motorbike had the cotter pin ones that had the cotter. Oh, dude, those tore my ankles up bad, really bad. So I just kind of reopened and re-scarred up what the scars I had from my Yamaha motorbike with some of those spindles. But yeah, I remember me and my buddies, we just broke a lot of stuff. It's just like you look at those little dropouts, they're just like paper thin.
Yeah.
Like you look at some of those old frames. And so yeah, I had a Diamondback yeah, Senior Pro, blue one. And I was mad because I saved up my lawn mowing money, and I kept looking at this red one, and the blue one was there, and they had a chrome one. And I went in there and I'm like, the red one's gone. I was like, where is it? And he's like, oh, dude, we sold it like 2 days ago. I was like, oh my God, we got this blue one. And I was like, all right, yeah, yeah, I'll take the blue one because I always liked painted bikes. I had some chrome ones over the years, and I was kind of, I always liked painted bikes because they got like nicks and scratches, and they have stories, much like we talked about. Like, oh yeah, that tire guzzer on the seat stay, that was at the Salt Lake National, and that dude, hit me or whatever. So I just liked, I don't know, I just like painted bikes. Chrome was cool, but it just like even I was a big Skyway guy. I had TAs and I had some chrome ones. I always liked the white ones better. I just like painted bikes, still like that. And I have a couple chrome bikes, and they're cool, but I just always like painted bikes.
Yeah, I started off with a chrome. I had a Redline RL 180 was my first real bike and first race bike.
Okay.
Um, and actually still have it, and
Oh,
uh,
super cool.
I've got the frame and the fork and all the parts have been they've gone they're in the graveyard now somewhere. They're probably in dad's storage and somewhere. And I could probably find them if I really went looking. But yeah, that was my being my first bike. It was all chrome, and I and at that point, I don't know that I have had a chrome bike since. And so now I want another chrome bike because it's been so long. But
Yeah.
having that as the first bike, I was like, nah, I want a colored bike. I want something painted.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. And it's like if you want Chrome, you can just go look at your Boss Cruiser, right? So
yeah, exactly.
that
Exactly.
that's like good Chrome. That's like good stuff. They can't, now it's hard to get that, that I mean obviously a lot of stuff isn't, but like the S&M stuff's really, he does a good job, Moliterno, yeah, all those guys, mad props to those guys, Bonner, all those dudes, it's to do they're all writer owned and do what they've done. And you know those are uh those are podcasts I do always listen to. If it's Moeller, Bonner, uh Moliterno, that just, you know got to respect what they've done. Robbie's done a good job with Cole. But what's what's cool about, I know this is kind of off topic, but it's kind of like, Gork and I used to do these SoCal tours, or we'd call them industry tours, but there was a lot in SoCal, so we'd always, jokingly call it the SoCal tour. And I know there's a lot of industry in Florida. I'm a big fan of Profile, have been for ever and ever and ever. Love Gus and Jim and all those guys, Corey over there, and uh, but that's a long way to go from Arizona for us to do, and you got Answer over there. Sawyer's one of my really, good buddies. And Florida's got a lot too. But it was interesting because you go to some of these places and they're like, yeah, here's where it comes in off the semi, and then we take it off the pallet, and then it goes over here and it goes on this shelf, and or we unbox it here and inspect, and then it goes up here. You go to S&M and it's like, dude, there's sparks flying, the dude's welding, guys, knurling bars on the knurler. I mean, it's you know, like the real deal, much like Profile. I don't know if you've ever been there, but you go there and
Um,
all these machines are running, and they're like, we're running this on this and this on this. And it's just like, they're running 24/7. They got different shifts and stacks of, all the gold stuff came in, and all the purple stuff and all the green, it's just like, man, it's so cool, it's like, this is, I'm not faulting those other people. It's just, when like when when you're a kid, if you went to like, anything like that, it was like they were all like that. And it's funny at S&M, it's like he's got these machines were from GT, and these ones were from Elf, and this one's from, I know I don't know if it's all the brands exactly, but it's like a lot of the tooling and a lot of the stuff he has is, but it's just, it's just cool. It's like, you know, I don't know. It's
the
just,
well, I mean the effort that has gone into it and the heart because it's not easy to make I mean it's not easy to make any company succeed. So I don't want to take anything away from
correct.
that, but to
Exactly. That's why I said I'm not discounting what anyone else is doing. I said it's
but
just
to
different.
but to make American made fly in an age of overseas manufacturing
Yeah.
takes, I think, a lot of heart and and a lot of desire to just make it happen.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, I mean, you talk to Mueller and have conversations with him, and I mean, he's put so much into it. He's invested so
His
much into
life.
it,
His life.
and yeah, and he's there and like getting to ride with him at Frogtown and Dirty Fest, and like he's riding bikes because loves riding bikes and he hangs out with his team and the crew because
Hmm.
he loves hanging out with them and spending time with them. And so it's, I mean, just blood, sweat, and tears. And
Yep.
it's been invested in. And so, yeah, I think there is something to be said. Like I, I remember as a commercial photographer, I got to go into a couple different locations and I went to an actual machine shop and manufacturing facility and like seeing this stuff, there's so many cool things to take pictures of. And,
Mhm.
you know, it's different when it just shows up on a pallet and gets transported to the staging
Correct.
area before it gets shipped out. It's different when, like you said, there's sparks flying and guys using presses and bending
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
And
yeah. Or the
so,
stuff's coming back from the anodizer. Yeah, I used to love those. He'd do them on his Chris would do them on his Instagram where it'd be like Factory Friday, and he'd do like all the bills. Like, oh, here's one from the Cromer for what, however much, and oh, here's one. We had to buy the grade 8 bolts for the stem. I got this many, and here's the here's the. It's all the stuff nobody sees. All the behind the scenes. They're
yeah,
like, oh, why does a stem cost $80? It's like, well, look how much you just paid for bolts, man. You know?
yeah. Well, I think I'm always amazed by how close in price all of the products are. So you have the
Hmm.
American made stuff and people will complain about that, but when you look at it, it's, I mean, not usually more than like 20% more because the overseas stuff is, they've
Yeah.
been able to increase prices on that.
Or like Cody and I, we got to know Mike, Mike Laird through the freestyle side, and he builds all of his custom stuff. And I was like, we were sitting at dinner, and I was like, dude, how much are your custom frames? I mean, you get the custom geometry, painted, and you pick the color, he's like, I think it was like $400. I go, $400? I go, that's it? And he was kind of like, dude, can you write that on the internet? Because he goes, dude, some people it's like, I stole their 401k because I want $400 and he builds great stuff. And I was just like, dude, to get a custom geometry frame painted the color you want for $400 made in America, that's like unbelievable.
And he'll like engrave, I can't
Yes.
remember, like engrave the
Yeah.
logo you want or whatever. Like it is
Yep.
so custom and I feel the same way. You look at the price of it and you go, that's it. What's the catch?
Yeah, and
And
there's a guy that works for us on some of our track builds. He goes by Tonka, and you probably seen him around there. And he has that pink layered frame that he just got, and he rode up. Uh, uh, he had it at our last national, and he rode up. He had this huge smile because I was talking to him about the layered stuff, and I was like, "Dude, you got to check him out." And he rode up, and he just had this huge smile. He goes, "Dude, I got one, man." And he goes. I was like, no way. I go, dude, that is so cool, man. And he was just like, man, it's the best bike ever. And he was so pumped, dude, so pumped. And it was just cool to see that. And it was like I was talking with him at Bailey Allen's house when we're all we always, when we come into Tulsa before the Grands, it's kind of like he always does like a gathering or a party in his backyard. So I say we're sitting by the bonfire and I was talking to him. And he was telling me he wanted to get a cool new frame. And I was like, dude, you should look in. So it was cool to see that he got one. He researched it and he was just like, man, I'm so happy. And but yeah, I mean, just the smile on his face when he rode up, he's like, I got one, man, check it out.
that's
And
really cool.
I was joking. I go, dude, you need me to go weld test it off the big hill for you to make sure everything's good. And he's all laughing.
I remember the first time I saw uh, the Supercross Hill because I was one of the guys that took 20 years away and came back to racing. And I think I knew of the Supercross Hill, but I had no idea how big it was. And the
Until
first
you
time I
see
got
it in
to,
person.
yeah, we were in Tulsa and I think it was Gork that or Scott that took us up to the hill. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is huge. And my dad goes, did you ride down it? And I was like, no, of course not.
Oh,
It's huge.
funny story on that. So again, being where I'm at, you get kind of callous to things. So at Chula used to be the only thing in the whole United States, and then, they got a couple different ones. And then we built Rock Hill. Okay. So then we go out to Rock Hill. We've already done several races on these big hills, and I've been out of country and been on some of the big hills at some UCI stuff and blah 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 blah. And we go to Rock Hill and everybody's just losing their mind. And I'm like, what is the big deal, people? I'm like, have you never seen a big hill before? And they're like, no, we haven't. I was like, oh yeah, if you don't go to California, because I had done so many and going to other countries, then you come here and you're like, what? I don't get, why is everybody flipping out? But it was all people from like the Eastern Seaboard that hadn't been out west or seen one. And I'm like, oh yeah, you kind of forget, you're like, what is the big deal? It's an 8 meter hill, and then you're like, okay, it is a big deal because they haven't seen it in person, video or online or whatever. But
Yeah.
so
Well, I mean,
that's,
that speaks again to the progression of the sport, and as you were in the sport for so long,
hmm
and you were so close to it that you saw it move overseas. You saw it move to the big hill to become a norm, and
hmm
then being over here is, the U.S. hadn't caught up, or the entire U.S. hadn't caught up yet.
yeah. Now we got two in Florida about an hour apart, and Louisville and
Yeah.
Tulsa. Yeah, you could go, there's some Rock Hill, of course. And yeah, it's it's definitely pretty wild, man, to see it go that way.
Yeah.
At the Red Bull race where they had a 10 meter, got to be bigger, can't just be the 8. They had that speed and style race or whatever. They did a 10 meter hill. I was like,
What
of course, they got
was
to.
that, like mid 2000s?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It
Yeah.
was it was billed as, speed and style. You're gonna get, points for, you do an X up, and it kind of just got separated out. The race guys raced, and they invited, race guys, park guys. It was a mixture, and it was just like, the freestyle park guys, whatever, they did their X ups and their big, and the race guys just raced. So it's, they're like, I'll, because it was supposed to be like style points and your score and add it all together. It's kind of but it had all kinds of crazy, crazy, had a wall ride in it. It had all kinds of crazy stuff. And uh, that would be another interesting race. What's funny is Connor Fields won that race. It's a Red Bull race, but he was sponsored by Monster. So,
Oh,
so there
nice.
you go.
Did he get less airtime because of it?
Um, I mean, I doubt it. I mean, if you're winning the race, it's kind of hard to not get airtime. But I, I, you could probably ask Connor, but I think he got some sort of maybe extra monster bonus or something because they thought it was so cool that the monster guy won the full race.
That's
So,
awesome.
and I think it was one of those things where they invited a lot of the Red Bull athletes, but Connor was one of those top tier guys. Like, well, you got to have him here. He's a U.S. guy. He's one of the you know top 5 guys in the world, arguably at that time. So you got to have him here to be a part of it. And yeah, worked out. So
That's pretty cool.
it's just kind of funny.
That's awesome. Oh, another question I had for you. And I want to be mindful of your time too.
It's all good. It's all good, man.
But a question I had for you was, when it comes to a number, picking a number, is there a number that you've hung on to for years?
Um, Funny that you would ask because I posted something about this not long ago, how the number 4 has kind of been a
Oh, I think I saw that.
common thing in my life.
I didn't remember it, but I think I had seen
I
that.
I always, you know, particular styles of 4s. I like how they look. Some were earned, some were, it's just kind of one of those things, I used it a lot. Some of that could be because my dad my dad used it sometimes racing. He'd be 4 or 4X, and I think just by default. But I have some early BMX pictures where I have a 44 on my plate. I had to have, they were so cool. I had to have two. So
That's awesome.
yeah. I think I sent it to Betcher one time. I go, dude, I was rocking the 44 before you were born, dude. And I showed him, I'm like doing a big turn bar wheelie out in front of the house. Just got the circle plate with just the generic 4. He's like, that's funny.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've got.
So yeah, so that if I pick a number, have a favorite number, it would probably be 4, but that doesn't work. That doesn't lend itself well to a career number with UCI because it has to be 2 digits or bigger because
Oh,
they
does
get
it?
1 through 8 goes to the world ranking. So
Gotcha.
you know, so yeah, it's just funny. But good yeah, it was funny. I was looking at some old plates and I was like, yeah, it's kind of makes sense. I like the number, you know. So
Yeah, on all at all the old school races, when I get to choose, I run 196, which is actually right there on that
yeah, I
plate.
see
But
that.
I've somebody asked me just the other day what 196 was, and I said it was my first earned number.
Oh,
And
gotcha.
and I don't know why. I don't know why it was so such a big deal in my mind, but looking back, it's still the look of it is just my favorite number
Yeah, yeah.
on a
Some
plate.
things just aesthetically, I just think it looks cool.
Yeah.
I like the cool cursive fours or
Yeah.
I always like
Those are cool.
the big back then they called them supercross numbers when they had the big landing panel and it had like the big number, fat number 1 or the big 4 or the big 2. And Nick Long tried, man. He tried to bring the big plates back with his that mesh 64. I was like, dude, keep running it, man. You're gonna bring it back, man. I go, the kids like you. You're gonna do it, and it just didn't work. Didn't catch on. I was hoping.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody wants the trimmed, more
Yeah, yeah,
aerodynamic
yeah,
plate. In my
yeah.
mind, I think one, I don't think I'm fast enough for the plate to be the problem.
Exactly.
And and two,
As many of us are. Yeah,
I would love to be at a point where I could just out train the plate. If that
yeah,
was the
yeah.
problem.
Do some wind tunnel testing.
Exactly. I don't know how
So
much.
funny story with so long time ago when remember the GPV bikes when they first came around like in the 80s. Of course it's on the cover of BMX Action. We get it. Everyone's in, oh, I got an old L frame. I'm gonna flip it upside down. And so we're in Idaho, my buddies make these homemade GPV bikes. And they're hang on one sec, I just gotta get a drink. Sorry.
That's okay. Actually, will you explain? So I'm familiar with them. But anyway,
Gravity powered vehicle is what GPV stood for, but it was a pretty big craze. They had a sanction. They used to run them. It was pretty much in SoCal. And when I say a sanction, we'll use that loosely. They did like 4, 5, 6 races. They used to do from the tram at Palm Springs, like down, like you can YouTube it and find them. Tommy Bracken's was pretty crazy fast on those things, and you know, pretty much all Harry Larry did it and like all it was like something they were, it was like a craze for a while. So my buddies make these GPV bikes and they're like, dude, you got to make one, man. They're so fast. They're so fast. I'm like, okay. And I was like, well, where are you doing at? So we go up to where they're doing it. And I said, well, uh, I'll just go down it with you guys on my cruiser. And at that time, I had a baby blue Elf cruiser with the big white Series 1 number plate on it, the Haro, big old windscreen. So uh, they take off down the hill, and then I go behind them and I'm catching them and I just go right by them and I'm kind of tucked down low, kind of behind the number plate, like kind of flat track style with my one arm, kind of tucked in, going like that. And I remember going by and looking at them, going, "Oh yeah, dude, those things are super fast." And I just was gone. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not building one of those. I just smoked you on my baby elf cruiser." Now, granted, it had like Hutch magnesium. It was like my race bike, and I'm sure the 24-inch wheels eventually made a big difference. But it was just funny. They were going, "Dude, they're so fast. You got to build one. Wait till you see how fast they are."
That's awesome. Yeah, you had that big windscreen on the front. That's what helped.
Yeah. And I had that big windscreen. That's what made me think of that. I go, "Yeah, I remember thinking like, man, this thing's really going to slow me down," but it it it, it kind of really didn't.
That's so cool. Yeah, the GPVs are cool. I've never actually ridden one. I know a couple of people that will take them up and
Yeah.
go bomb down hills with them and stuff, and always look kind of interesting, but I never. It wasn't enough of a motivating factor for me to have that bike sitting in the collection.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it can only go downhill. It can't do, can't do
Yeah.
anything.
What happens when we get to the bottom? We got to push it back up?
Yeah, exactly. Or you get the sag wagon to haul you back up. You gotta have the buddy with the truck or whatever.
Exactly.
But yeah, that was interesting. It's cool to talk to like Gork did it, and it's cool to talk to Tommy about it. And I was like, dude, you were doing like almost 80 miles an hour on like GT tires, like not not, these things aren't speed rated for that.
Dang.
So it's
Yeah.
like that's just insane.
I
So but yeah, there's been a lot of crazy like F1 bikes were like a craze for a while. It's like you've seen all these weird like incarnations and they're kind of BMX, but they're kind of not, they use BMX aspects, but it's kind of like I was always, rode some trail stuff like that uh, I remember going to like trails like when like in the 80s and stuff we just found dirt piles and made jumps. And then I remember going to God, maybe it was Austin and Ninth Street maybe, or no, it was before that because I was riding that stuff in Hawaii, so it was before because I lived in Hawaii before then. But when I first went to some where they like dug in the ground and threw the dirt up, I was like, oh my God, why didn't we ever think of that? You're just like, to make it makes it twice as big. We were just like, oh, some cool dirt piles. We'll go shape some jumps and jump them. We never, you never in a million years thought to like dig a hole in the ground to throw the dirt up and then, make it.
Yeah, you need half as much dirt to make it
Correct.
bigger.
Yeah. And I was like, man, who thought, you're just like, who's the first guy that thought of that?
Yeah,
Who's
the
the
only
who's the trail boss that thought of that,
we tried to do that at some like local trails when I was a kid, and I just remember the downside is when I grew up in Northwest Washington, so the downside is when it rains, which is all the time, and it rains and then it just fills them up, and you've just created a mini pond.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then
So
just about when it gets ready, it rains again and fills it up again. Like,
exactly,
dang it. So yeah, well,
exactly.
we're in southern Idaho, it was pretty dry. So we on the base they had this area and it was like the off-road area. You could ride like motorcycles and dune buggies, and we had these jumps out there. And then I remember I think I was like in 11th grade. This announcement came out. Oh, they're going to build another 9 holes to the golf course. And you're like, oh, sweet. And then you're like, oh, wait, it's going to be over our whole off-road riding area. That's not cool. So,
Wonderful.
urban,
Not sure how we feel
urban,
about this.
urban sprawl got,
Yeah,
as many jump zones have been claimed.
I have a friend that's a what do you call it? Selective, like a selective logger. So he goes in and just clears out the dead trees
Okay.
So it's in an effort to actually grow the forest back stronger and healthier because you're actually letting sunlight in
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
so anyway, he gets brought into some projects where they've got these big parks and they're trying to thicken the forest a little bit and bring health to it. Well, anyway, I remember a few years ago and he had this project where he posts pictures and he's like, I don't want to tear out these kids' jumps. Like, unfortunately, the road that they allotted me is supposed to go right through these kids' trails. And all I can think about is how much work and time and effort and how many tears
Yeah.
are going to happen because of these trails that get torn out. And he hated it. He's like, he called whoever was in charge of the project and he's like, is there any other way that I can get in? And they go, that's literally the only access that we have. And anyway, so yeah, it sucks. It's just a part of life, but it does suck.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like as I've gotten older, I remember going, like when we lived in Idaho, we'd always go, like for spring break, we'd always go back to Ventura, and I'd bring my bike, and we'd go to, I'd race Simi, I'd race Farnham Raceway, which was in Ventura, and then it got moved to the like Satakoy River Bottom, which is kind of between Ventura and Simi, and uh yeah, yeah, it was crazy, like I don't remember where I was going with that. What were we talking about before
Oh,
that?
like the jumps getting dozed and
Oh yeah,
cleared.
yeah. And then my dad we would drive around, and he's like, yeah, dude, in high school we'd camp there and we'd ride our dirt bikes, and it's like houses in it. When you're like high school, it doesn't really register. You're like, yeah, dude, they build houses all the time. What's the big deal? But then, over a course of time going, like I explained to somebody, it was funny, couple people are like, where are you like from? Because you post all these crazy pictures from all these different. I go, I got a lot of old neighborhoods, man. I go, I do. And then so going back to some of these places over the years, or even you know, places that we used to go to in Idaho and stuff, it's just like, now I understand it, because you're like, man, it was so awesome. It was right there. It was right by the neighborhood. Now it's a Fry's or an Albertsons or something or whatever. You're just like, man, kids are missing out, but as I got older, I was like, now I understand. When my dad would tell me those stories, it didn't really register that much, but now I understand more what he was talking about, like you know, things being gone, or urban sprawl, so to speak. I mean, so many
Yeah.
BMX tracks have been lost because of that,
Yeah.
BMX tracks, motocross tracks, so many iconic, I guess that's sometimes the sad part of getting old, I guess, is a lot of that stuff happens, but there's always new memories to be made.
Yeah.
Like,
And with every change
I,
comes a challenge to overcome.
yeah, I was talking to Mike Polson, and he was telling me these stories. He's like, man, you have all these memories are coming up I haven't thought about in all these years, because he's going to get inducted to the Hall of Fame this year, and he's kind of been checked out. Like, whatever happened to that dude? He's always been in Utah, always been around, and he just worked, and literally, like, just when he was done, he was done. And yeah, it's funny. I was talking to him, and he's like, yeah, I live like 4 houses down from where I grew up. I'm still like literally the same. So talking to him, and some are, a lot are good, some are, some maybe he views as maybe not good. But talking with him, he was talking about all his memories, and I was like, a lot of those guys, they don't understand um how much I don't want to say impacted, or kids looked up to them in the magazines or as a radio. They don't, a lot of those guys don't understand that, how much they meant to a kid in Washington, you, or me in Idaho or Florida, reading the magazines, you're just like, dude, that white Sting is the coolest, man. He's the only one that had a white Sting. His brother painted it. And he was like, yeah, I thought for sure they would make that like a color the next year. And he goes, they never did, but man, it was so cool because he had it and they didn't make it and you couldn't get it. You could get one and paint it, but and then one of my good friends, or a guy I used to race, he traveled with the Polsons a lot. So he has all these awesome photos, like hanging out at local races, like all the, his name's Kevin, and he's got a lot of cool stuff, and but but yeah, he was talking about all his memories, and I said, well, hopefully we can make you some new ones when you come there and you have new memories to add. And he goes, yeah. He goes, and he's like, I literally haven't thought about this stuff in years, man. Like, when I called him, he was just like, what? You know? No,
Well,
he knew because Kevin actually got me his number. And yeah, I think but again, I mean, he's kind of the guy that put Utah on the map for racing, man. I mean,
wow.
but I mean, yeah, when you guys my age, when you think of Schwinn, you think, Donnie Atherton and Mike Polson, even though there was a lot of other guys that raced for them that were great. Some are in the Hall of Fame. I go, you just can't not think of those two guys. It's like Donnie Atherton and Mike Polson.
That's cool.
They
Well,
were like Schwinn.
it it is interesting. I know I've mentioned it in another episode at some point, but having a conversation and being um, in in the vicinity in the same room with Toby Henderson and Bob Osborne, and Toby just talking about, like, Bob, you're the reason that we became who we were. You're the reason that we became
Hmm.
interesting to people. And Bob's like, I didn't do anything. And it took Bob a long time to take credit for it.
Hmm.
And I got to, I mean, I'm grateful for the opportunity that I got to sit in enough conversations with him
Hmm.
and kind of watch him go over the past few years from a spot of, nah, I didn't do anything, to, okay, yeah, I can see where I made a difference. And,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that just people that
Yeah,
want to,
he shaped yeah, I mean, he, shaped a lot of things, from, their careers to uh image of the sport to what kids think are cool or not cool, or he made it look cool.
yeah. But then that ties in so much with what we were saying about Mike Polson, because he wouldn't necessarily realize it, and eh, like you said at the beginning of the conversation, we're not always great at taking compliments, and so it he you don't realize the impact that you're making on somebody, and so it's any of the writers that did that, they might not know exactly the impact that they made, and it was, but they're grateful for the impact that somebody like a Bob or John Kerr, whatever, whoever what it
Yes.
was, made on them because of the simple thing that they did that wasn't intended to make an impact. It was just for fun.
They're like, thanks for making me do that jump 37 times, Bob's got a great photo. And then you can take it a step further is they didn't have the digital to look at. That was film, baby. They're like, I think I got something good. We'll see when I get back.
Yeah. Oh man, the amount of respect that I have for that after being a photographer, and only being a photographer with digital. Like, it's a very different world. I have a lot of privileges that they don't, or that they didn't. And I have no idea, uh, because trying to take action shots with a digital camera is hard enough. But
Hmm.
it speaks to the photos that all those photographers got with analog cameras.
Yeah, when the digital first started coming in, I remember there was like on the race side, when people started showing, they're like, I'm film for life, man. I'm not doing it, and then it eventually, but it was funny once everybody got on digital. I remember like being at Reno or like an indoor where you can look down or like the Grands. I would laugh because everybody would shoot a picture and then you'd see them all look down like this to see, oh, what did I get? I go, man, they didn't used to do that in photography. It's almost,
Yeah. Well, I remember asking Bob uh if he shot with digital or film still, and he goes, "Oh, digital," and he laughed at me, basically for asking the question. And he's like, "No, I'm not going to go through that effort. We have tools for that now."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
And you can clean them up online. Yeah, it was funny. I used to when one of our guys was working here. I heard the term I'm shooting in raw, which I didn't know what that was. I just heard him say it all the time. So we were at our races, and it was when Caruth was coming around a lot. Mike Caruth, and he covered a lot of the races. And I remember there was a podium, and I kind of bumped him out of the way. I go, look out, man! I got a new raw app on my phone. I go, I'm shooting in raw right now, and he's all, do they really have that? And I go, I know. I go, I don't even know what that means. I just hear this guy, our guy at our work say it all the time. He just started laughing because I go, I got this new app on my phone. It's called Raw. I'm shooting in it right now. I go, real media coming through. Look out. I'm shooting in Raw.
that's awesome.
I was like, I don't even know what it is, but I'm going to throw it out there because it sounds funny. So,
Love that. Yeah, exactly. And I know that it gets him frazzled when I do. Man. Well, Shannon, thank you so much. Man, I appreciate your time.
oh man, thanks for thinking of me or uh like I said, we talked about a little bit about podcast prior through our messaging and explained some of that. And I've done a few kind of pick and choose, I guess. And um I like what you're doing. You focus on the positives, and there's so much good stuff out there to cover, good people, a lot of people doing a lot of cool things. And yeah, it's it's done a lot for me. It's kept me out of trouble. It's I've been lucky enough to make a career out of something that I like to do. I feel very I don't ever take it for granted. You know, the Anderson family, is an awesome family to work for, because we are a family-owned business, and BA is an awesome he doesn't like us to call him boss, but he is a boss. He's great to work for, and we're all very, very vested in what we do. People are like, oh, don't take things, so I go, dude, we work hard, man. We work, everyone here, from the guy in the warehouse to the guy that ships out the memberships, and people don't really see all those people. They know us, but there's so many. I mean, Cheryl in our art department, she's worked here, let's see, 43 years. You want to know who has cool
Wow.
stories, man? Her. She's been here. She's worked here since 1982.
Dang.
She's got some great story.
That is
She was
awesome.
around in the wild, wild west still,
No kidding.
And yeah, she's around for when, ABA had a plane and got stories of that. I mean, like
Wow.
crazy, crazy stories. Awesome lady, been here forever. A lot of some of the older guys know her because she's been here a long time, but she's not one. We try to get her to come to the Hall of Fame every year. Nah, I don't want to go, and I don't want to do the crowds. I like to, but awesome lady, great friend. I always heard about her before I worked here, and then to get to work with her is pretty cool. And she's kind of definitely one of the unsung heroes and fixes a lot of things. It all.
That's
When
cool.
you're, it's one thing you're the idea guy, it's the other thing if you're the art person that has to like finish it. The idea the guy doesn't give you the stuff till the last minute, it puts a lot of pressure on you. And She's been putting a magazine together, and I mean, yeah, I mean, she can go on and on about her. She's awesome, but everybody here comes from racing. From Cody to bit, Bill Morris, our national director, he made it to the AA pro level. Most people are. It always is kind of funny to me when you know, I post a lot of old pictures and they'll go, "Man, I didn't even know you like raced. Or I didn't know you rode bikes." I was like, "You don't know me very well, you know." Which, they're younger, and it's like I told Wally, I go, "I've worked here this many years, longer than you are old. I've worked here."
Yeah.
And I love Wally. He's awesome. He's a good dude, hardworking guy, um, has the passion, can like sprint faster than any of us now. We're all getting old, so
That's awesome.
so so yeah. It's I appreciate what you do. It's cool what you're doing, and I know you go around to a lot of tracks and visit with them and um try to share some knowledge and all of that. And it's like I tell like Barry's and Nick Longs and Tyler Browns, I go, we need like 10 more of those dudes, that travel around and do clinics and visit kids and do all these um things that help, they bring excitement to the local level. Not everybody can make it to a national or make it to even a state race across town, but if you know Barry or Nick Long or it's one of these guys pulls in, it's a big deal. And there's a lot of um women racers that are doing a lot of that stuff too, which is awesome too, because it's cool that girls can have their own heroes now. Not that they can't like the guy racers, but it's cool that they have, their own racers to look, like, the women pro class wasn't a thing when I grew up.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's pretty cool. And I think that, when you mention not everybody can make it to a national, it's absolutely true. I mean, there are a lot of kids that their Sunday afternoon race is their national. That's what
That's
they
it.
look forward to every single week. And unfortunately, if we I think, sometimes that it can get missed and like it we can miss the joy that just a simple local race can bring to a kid. It's like, the bigger races are fun. They're exciting. There's more points involved, but some of those kids, I mean, my kids still don't even know what points are.
Yeah.
And they just love riding their bike.
Yeah, they just want to race and ride or whatever. You don't have to
And
race every day.
yeah, and so, they don't care about a bigger race. I mean, we were just at a state race and my daughter didn't race. My son wanted to. My daughter didn't, and that was totally fine. But they go to a
Yeah.
national race, and that becomes their Super Bowl, their thing to look forward to,
Mhm.
their highlight. And so it doesn't matter what level kids want to race on. I think the bigger thing is just I love just talking about kids that want to race and adults and families that race together and stuff like that. So
Yep. Yep. No, it's always we always, there always used to be the one family you're tearing down at Rock Hill and they walk by and they go, "Man, thanks so much. This is a cool weekend. And this was our first national," and you're like, we do it for everybody, but that right there makes you roll the banners a little faster.
yeah,
So, so,
it's pretty cool.
it's like, when just one more quick thing, when Clayton retired, uh, in I don't know, '08, something like that. We used to always talk about this, like Clayton was at ABA since I raced. I mean, he was like the t-shirt guy, he was official. Like I was like telling him, like, man, it's gonna be weird that you're not like here. You're like the carved Indian guy in front of the general store. You're just always here. You've been here since I've raced, you know. And he was gonna retire, and we'd always talk about much like it was like, remember when, this race got flooded or they put the hay in the track and it ruined this or, just all these funny stories over the years because we all grew up racing so much. And Clayton was, he was the main figure that we saw. And I was talking to him, and it was interesting what he said because he was, when I was telling him it was going to be weird that he wasn't here, he said, "Well, remember all the memories that we talk about from your guys' racing days?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, it's your job now to make sure that those kids have those same memories." Just like, yeah, I never thought of it that way, but
That's
it,
cool.
yeah.
It adds a little bit of an oomph to what you do and why you do it,
Hmm. Yeah.
which is pretty cool.
But
Yeah.
yeah, we're all a piece of the pie. I always say you're a slice. We're a big part of it, obviously, maybe the bigger portion of it, but um, yeah, I mean, it takes everybody to make it happen,
Yeah.
doing what you do, doing what you do makes a difference too, so
And it's been fun. Thank
yeah,
you. Thank you for that.
yeah,
I don't want
yeah,
to
no, I
gloss over that.
yeah, yeah, appreciate you again, appreciate you thinking of me, and yeah, anytime, if you got other things down the road you want to talk about, or got questions about other things or anything like that, hit us up, hit me up, whatever,
Right on.
always welcome. So,
Well, I appreciate you, Shannon, and thank you for your time and thanks for sharing some stories.
yep. Oh, I do have, um, you made mention of if there's maybe somebody that I think you could maybe have on your show. Now, I didn't go
Okay.
back and look at every single person you've had on the show. So
Oh, that's
if I
okay.
say, if I say somebody like, I'm pretty sure you had Coach Jimmy on, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Solid dude. Love me some Coach Jimmy. He's a good dude. Like what he's got going on and what he's doing. Another person I thought of was like Howard Cato.
Oh, I don't know him.
He is the Bay Area BMXers,
Okay.
and he does a lot of outreach. He's like a, born and raised Oakland dude. Um, been in it. He's around. He's close to my age. Howard Cato and Bill Smith would be good guys to have on. And Nick Long was another one I thought of, but I don't know if you've already had him on or not. So,
I I have not yet. Um, yeah, I was talking to him and I was thinking about him the other day, so
because
I
yeah,
will.
he does a lot of good for the sport, and it's a lot of things he doesn't have to do, and he does it, to give back because he says, "Man, the sport gave me so much," so.
That's
But
awesome.
Nick Long would be awesome. Howard Cato would be cool. He runs the Bay Area BMXers, but like I said, he does a lot of stuff with the youth in the Oakland area and all that. So him and his partner Bill Smith would be a good. I think they have a lot to talk about
That's awesome. Well, I
too.
appreciate that.
So yeah.
Cool. Right on. Man, well, thank you. Thank you
Thank you.
for that. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the conversation, the stories. I appreciate all of it.
Yeah, I mean, likewise, anytime, man. I appreciate it.
Cool. Well, thank you, Shannon. Have a great day and look forward to the next time our paths cross.
Yeah, I'll see you Hall of Fame weekend or Tulsa weekend the week after that. We got a lot going on those 2 weekends. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'll
we'll
be
see
around.
you. All right. Well, thank you.
Right on. Take care. Thanks, Shannon.
Yep, you too. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode. It is because of people like you and our sponsors who make this whole thing possible because they have a desire to see the sport grow. If you would like to get involved in the mission of BMX Breakthrough, you can start by going to your local track, find a way to volunteer, help out, and serve there. Or you can go to our website, bmxbreakthrough.com, in order to donate, find out about sponsorship, or learn more.